Hi everyone, it's Alice and today we're gonna do a book haul. I have a lot of new books to show you and the size of this haul is the result of several things. First of all, I really like books and I am an adult with adult money and I'm me. So that's always a contributing factor, but also it was my birthday this month and I got some books for my birthday and some gift certificates and stuff, and here we are. I have many exciting books to show you, so let's just get into it, and I think we will start with some historical fiction. First up, we have got Matrix by Lauren Groff, and this is set in the 12th century, I think, and we follow this 17-year-old girl who is cast out of the royal court that she's a part of because she's considered too rough for that life, and she's sent to England to take over this impoverished abbey, which is filled with nuns who are like almost all starving and they're riddled with disease, and you know, it sounds like a delightful place to be sent. This sounds very intriguing though, and I think it has a little bit of a feminist twist, which I'm always into, and I've heard a lot of good things about the writing in here and like the way that the writing describes the setting and stuff, which I'm always a big fan of, so I'm very excited about that. I did get a bookmark with this though because it was a gift and it's an Alice in Wonderland bookmark, which of course, and it's very, very pretty. Secondly, we have got a book that I've been eyeing for a couple of years. It's The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell, and this I think is set in Victorian times and it has like some horror elements to it, which sounds amazing. We meet this woman in here who marries this guy who I think she sort of expects marrying this guy is going to set her up for a life of luxury and comfort, but then a couple of weeks into their marriage, this guy dies, which is unfortunate. This obviously changes her life a lot, and she finds herself stuck in this place where like the servants of the house are all really resentful and the local villagers just hate her, and then I think the only person who can like keep her company is like her dead husband's weird cousin, which doesn't sound great, but I think like the horror elements in here have something to do with a wooden figure in this house which is locked away somewhere, but I'm guessing she comes across it and it's like really weird because it looks exactly like her and then the figure's eyes like follow her around or something. I don't know, but it sounds very interesting and a little spooky. Then we've got a little mystery section, which is comprised of 3 books in the same series actually. It's these 3 books. So we have The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Back, and A Red Herring Without Mustard, all by Alan Bradley. This is a series that I've been recommended countless times and I'm sure I'm gonna love it. And it's really cool that I got 3 of these as a gift from a friend because I'm assuming the fact that I got all 3 means that they think that I'm really gonna like this. The story follows a young girl in the 1950s who ends up investigating a bunch of mysteries, I'm assuming. I'm pretty sure there's at least a murder in the first book. And I love a good cozy mystery, and these seem to be quite cozy, and I think it's why so many people have recommended these to me. And we're following an 11-year-old girl in here who like loves poison, which I'm really into and I fully support. Now, for those of you who are particularly observant and you're on this channel a lot, you may know that I do actually have a copy already of the first book in the series, and I just have never gotten around to reading it. I prefer these covers and these editions, so I'm gonna keep these and then I'm gonna give that away. And hopefully I will read these soon. Moving on, we have got a stack of like varying degrees of fantasy, starting with Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reid, which first of all, this is a really cool cover. I love it. And this is a book that I have had my eye on for a while and I'm very intrigued by it. It's a gothic horror type book and I think that it's a retelling of some sort of like fairy tale or story, but I'm not familiar with that story, so I don't know if it's really gonna matter that much to me. We're following a young witch in here though, who spends her days being more of a tourist attraction than anything else, and she lives with her tyrannical father and she just wants to get out and get away, I think. And I don't really know what the plot is about. It says something about a curse and a monster with unquenchable appetites in here. And I do think that our main character ends up having to like save the city with her magic or something. But it's also about her just trying to find her place in the world. And I do think there is a little bit of a romance in here. And I just think all of this together is gonna make an excellent book. Then we have The Fairy Bargains of Prospect Hill by Rowenna Miller. And this is historical fiction. It's set in the early 1900s. And it's set in a world where fae are real, but they're mostly forgotten about. And we meet these sisters who come from quite a superstitious family. And they still like make bargains with the fae, I think. And then one of the sisters ends up getting married to this guy who ended up being much more horrible than anyone thought. And that's all I really know. I don't really know how that ties into the fae stuff, but I hope that there's more like fae and fairy stuff in here than other things, because I'm probably more interested in that than like the marriage stuff. But it sounds very interesting, and I do like that the story focuses on two sisters, because I always love reading stories about sisters. Speaking of fae, I do actually also have a book that I have already read. It's Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. And this book is about this scholar who studies fae and fairies, and she goes to this island up north to do some research because she's writing this encyclopedia. And she ends up being joined by this uninvited colleague, and together they experience a lot of magical stuff. I really enjoyed this book, and if you like fae and fairies, this is an excellent read. I also of course have to mention this cover is absolutely beautiful and I love it. Next we have In the Shadow Garden by Liz Parker, which is set in a small town in Kentucky, and we follow three sister witches who are famous in their small town for this shadow garden that they have where they grow magical stuff, I'm assuming. And they're very famous for this bourbon that they make, which can make people forget their worst memories, which does sound very handy. But there is a little bit of a mystery in here. There's something about this summer 20 years ago where the entire town just forgot the whole summer. And during that summer, I think someone disappeared and maybe someone died. And I'm assuming this forgetfulness has something to do with magic. I don't really know, but it sounds very interesting. I love a good story about witches, and I am quite intrigued as to what's going on with the mystery. Then we have an absolutely beautiful copy of Now She Is Witch by Kirsty Logan. And I just have to say, I am obsessed with this cover design. It's so pretty, and I love the title as well. And all of this just immediately intrigues me. We've got more witches in here, and it says it's set in a world where women grasp at power through witchcraft, sexuality, and performance, but most of all by throwing each other to the wolves, which sounds very interesting. To be totally honest with you, I haven't looked that much into this book or what it's about. I got it mostly because it's a book by Kirsty Logan, and I've already read 3 books by her, and I really like her writing. So I'm just assuming that I'm gonna like this. And I love her writing, and I also love witches, so I feel like it's gonna be great. We've then got some more horror with Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. And there's a lot of witches in this haul, I'm noticing, because there's witches in this one as well, but it does feel like it's the season for it, so I feel like it makes sense. This follows a woman who has spent years watching her sister suffer at the hands of this abusive prince, and she's finally come to the realization that no one is going to help with that, and she has to do it. So she seeks out this powerful grave witch, which if that is not a title to aspire to, I don't know what is. But she seeks this woman out, and the woman says, I will help you, but in return you have to like complete these tasks for me. And that's all I really know. I know that there's something about a fairy godmother in here and a knight, and most importantly, there is something about a chicken being possessed by a demon, which caught me completely off guard, but I've also never wanted to read about something more. So That's very exciting. We then have another absolutely beautiful book. It's Cunning Women by Elizabeth Lee. And this is historical fiction. It's set in the 1620s, where a girl is born with a birthmark that reveals that she is, like her mother, a witch. And she spends her life growing up being torn between wanting to be just a regular, ordinary girl and wanting to find out what kinds of power she might possess. Because of the time period that this is set in and the fact that it makes mention of some god-fearing man in the village, I'm assuming this has some like witch hunt vibes to it. And I don't really know how much fantasy there is actually in here. I'm wondering if it's more like straight up historical fiction with some alluding to magic. I don't know if there's actual magic in it, but I'm excited to read it and find out. Last of the fantasy books, we have The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman. And this is a part of the Practical Magic series, and I think that this is the last one. We have Practical Magic, and then we have 2 prequels, and then this one. I think this is set in like after Practical Magic, and it's like another generation of the Owens family, and I think in this one they finally break the curse. I do have one of the prequels waiting for me on my shelves. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm gonna read that first before this, I think, but I'm excited to have it. Next, we have got a little romance section. And first up here, we have a book that I actually got as a gift, but I've wanted to read this for a while, so I'm really excited that I got it. It's Fresh Water for Flowers by Valérie Perrin. This is a translated book. It's translated from French, and we follow this caretaker at a cemetery, which already, you know, I'm into that. And she is like often visited by the townsfolk, and she's gotten into this like rhythm in her life. But this rhythm is disrupted in this book by this police officer who just appears out of nowhere, and he goes to her and demands that she help him find his mother's ashes or something, and I think he thinks that it's in the graveyard, but it's not in his mother's grave. I don't know. It sounds interesting. And I have no idea where the romance comes in, but I just really want to read this book. I've heard so many good things. I'm also always looking to read more translated books, and I've heard so many good things about the writing in this, and I'm very excited. The other one that I have seems to have a slightly different tone to it based on the title and the cover design. It's A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon by Sarah Hawley. And this is about, again, a witch who has been prophesized to be a really powerful witch in her family, but she's not really interested in any of that. She just likes spending her days doing like gardening and baking, which I'm very much into. And I think what happens is that one day in her baking efforts, she manages to summon a demon. I don't know, it just sounds like fun. Very like fun and lighthearted. Then at the end here, we have a little classics section, and we're starting off with 3 of these penguin cloth-bound classics, but it's like the small ones, and very excited about these books because they are so pretty. The first one is Cosmicomics by Italo Calvino, and this I think is a short story collection, and I don't really know what these short stories are about, but I do know that I really like this author's writing because I've read some books by him before, so I think it'll be interesting to read more of his stories. The second one is Bonjour, Tristesse, which is actually a book I've wanted to read for a while, so I'm excited that it comes in this edition. I think it's set in the 1950s or somewhere around that, and we follow this wild young girl and her father, and they live quite an adventurous life, I think. But then the father decides to marry, and that's all I really know. I also know that this was very scandalous when it came out in the 50s, and it's translated from French. And I don't know, it just sounds interesting. We also have The Star Child by Oscar Wilde, which I got mostly just because I want to read more by Oscar Wilde. And this follows this child who is abandoned in a forest, and he's found by a poor woodcutter who takes him in. And as he grows up, he turns out to be this absolutely beautiful creature, but he's also like vain and arrogant and cruel, and it just sounds very interesting. I do already have a couple of these editions on my shelves, and I'm very excited to put these with those and have a little collection all together. These kinds of things, just like seeing them on my shelves, just makes me so happy. At the very end, we have got a book that I decided to treat myself to, and I think at this point we're just gonna say that I'm now collecting editions of this book. It's Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and this is one of my favorite books and one of my favorite classics, and I have several editions of this now, but when I saw this, I just had to get it because it's so pretty. I think these editions are called the painted editions or something like that, and I just think it's beautiful. It was very difficult for me to not get several classics in these editions because there are more, and it's hardcover and it's just so beautiful. It has like gold edges, and I don't know, I just had to get it because I thought it was so beautiful, and I love this book. It's just the best. It also is not like illustrated, but it has these pages with like a bigger quote, which I thought was really nice, and there are several of them throughout the book, and I don't know, I just think this is a beautiful, beautiful edition of this book, and I had to get it. The other editions as well of like other classics that come in these editions are beautiful, and I might have to get some more, but I started with this because it's my favorite. I do kind of like the book with this on it though, which I don't think you're supposed to keep this on. I don't really know, but I just really like the look of this as well, so I might keep this on when it's on my shelves and just take it off if I ever read this edition, although I have a lot of editions of this, so who knows, but oh, it's such a good book and it's so pretty. That was the last book though, which means that we have reached the end. I would love to know if you have picked up any exciting new books lately, and of course if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, I would love to hear what you thought. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!